The sun shone brightly on a perfect Saturday afternoon, filling the backyard with warmth and the smell of sizzling burgers and hot dogs. Laughter rang out as children chased each other around the yard, their giggles mixing with the cheerful chatter of adults catching up over cold drinks. It was a day for family, an occasion filled with smiles, good food, and cherished memories. As family members gathered around the picnic table, plates piled high with tasty sides, stories were shared, and jokes were exchanged. Grandma's famous potato salad was a hit once again, drawing compliments from everyone. Uncle Mike flipped burgers on the grill, expertly managing the heat while keeping an eye on the kids playing games nearby. The atmosphere was light and joyful, a perfect snapshot of summer bliss. In one corner of the yard, Aunt Sarah attempted to teach her niece how to toss a frisbee, laughter erupting whenever it flew off course. Everywhere you looked, there was love and togetherness. This was what family meant, a chance to relax, celebrate, and enjoy each other's company without a care in the world. Little did they know that just beyond their laughter was Karen, peering through her window and filming every moment. While they were wrapped up in their fun, she focused on her own agenda. The family's carefree day would soon be complicated by her unusual obsession, but for now, they remained blissfully unaware of what was to come. As the family continued to bask in their carefree day, their neighbor Karen was busy at her window, peering through a viewfinder. Tall and slender, with sharp features and a hawkish gaze, she always seemed more comfortable observing than participating in neighborhood gatherings. Her long hair was tied in a tight bun, and she wore sunglasses that obscured her eyes, giving her an air of mystery and intensity. Karen had lived next door for years but kept to herself most of the time. She rarely joined community events, preferring to stay inside her home, where she felt secure in her own world. But that day, the sounds of laughter and joy spilling from the family's backyard ignited something in her that drove her to act. Armed with a smartphone, she positioned herself strategically by the window while claiming she was monitoring property line behavior. At first, the family didn't think much of it. They noticed her with the camera but shrugged it off as typical neighborly curiosity. After all, who wouldn't be curious about a bustling family barbecue? However, as days turned into weeks, Karen's constant filming became increasingly strange. The family members exchanged glances, puzzled by what could possibly warrant such scrutiny. What was Karen up to? Confusion lingered in the air as they brushed off the uneasy feeling of being watched, unaware that this was only the beginning of their troubles with their peculiar neighbor. As days passed, Karen's unusual behavior became a topic of conversation for the family. During their next barbecue, as laughter filled the air, they noticed her again, camera in hand, positioned at her window. It was becoming hard to ignore her persistent presence. When one of the guests asked about it, the family exchanged unsure glances, wondering how to address the growing tension. Later that evening, Karen finally approached them under the guise of neighborly concern. With her arms crossed tightly over her chest and a stern expression, she explained that she was monitoring property line behavior. She insisted she needed to ensure that no one encroached on her carefully defined boundaries. The family's eyebrows raised in disbelief as they listened to her excuse. The notion seemed absurd, especially since they had always respected their property lines. "Why would we intrude on your space?" one family member asked, trying to mask their annoyance. Karen merely shrugged, maintaining that her vigilance was essential for neighborhood harmony. As she spoke, her intensity only added to the unease among the family and their guests. While some chuckled at Karen's odd reasoning, others were visibly concerned about the implications of such scrutiny. It was clear that Karen's fixation was more than just a quirky habit. It raised questions about her motives and set the stage for future conflicts that would soon unravel in their lives. As the family's unease with Karen's behavior grew, they decided it was time to address the situation directly. One afternoon, they mustered the courage to knock on her door, hoping for a calm discussion about the filming. When Karen answered, her stern expression made it clear that she was not in the mood for friendly conversation. "Why do you keep filming our family gatherings?" asked one family member, trying to remain polite despite their frustration. Karen simply shrugged and reiterated her bizarre claim about monitoring property lines. It felt as though their concerns fell on deaf ears, as she dismissed each question and concern they voiced. Over the following weeks, the family sent her several friendly notes, asking her to stop filming. However, each note was met with silence. With every barbecue and gathering marked by her watchful gaze from across the yard, their sense of privacy dwindled. The guests began to notice too, comments whispered between laughter hinted at shared discomfort. The lack of response only fueled their irritation. It became clear that Karen had no intention of altering her behavior. Confused and upset by her refusal to engage or acknowledge their complaints, the family felt trapped in an unsettling game with their neighbor. As summer continued, their patience wore thin, and whispers of a more permanent solution began to surface. They realized they needed to take action before their serene backyard gatherings turned into endless worry. After much discussion, the family finally reached a consensus: they needed to install a tall privacy fence. This decision wasn't made lightly. They weighed their options carefully, considering both their need for privacy and their desire to live harmoniously with Karen. They researched local codes and homeowner association (HOA) regulations to ensure that their plans would comply fully. Excitement mixed with anxiety as they envisioned having a cozy, protected space for their BBQs without the unsettling feeling of being watched. The family spent weekends drawing up blueprints and chatting with neighbors who had faced similar issues. They settled on a sturdy wooden fence, one that would not only provide privacy but also enhance the aesthetic of their yard. Once the plans were set, they applied for permits and received quick approval, which gave them the confidence that they were proceeding correctly. With the green light from the HOA, they hired a local contractor who specialized in fence installation. On the day of construction, laughter and chatter filled the air as family members helped out, eager to see the project take shape. As each panel was erected, the family felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over them. Their backyard began to transform into a sanctuary, a place where laughter could ring freely once again. Little did they know how Karen would react upon discovering that her view would soon be completely obstructed by this necessary solution. But for now, they were focused on reclaiming their space and finally putting an end to her unwanted surveillance. The day of the fence installation dawned bright and sunny, filled with a palpable sense of anticipation. The family gathered early in the morning, buzzing with excitement as they watched the contractor arrive with a truck full of materials. Each panel of wood represented not just a physical barrier but also a promise of regained privacy and peace. As the contractor began to outline the yard, the family offered to help by clearing away any obstacles and organizing tools. Children giggled as they played nearby, while adults shared relieved smiles, knowing this was a step toward reclaiming their backyard haven. They felt united in their mission, eagerly discussing how the new fence would enhance their space for future gatherings. With every post that went into the ground and each panel that was secured in place, the feeling of anxiety that had hung over them for weeks began to lift. Curious neighbors peeked from their windows, but today, the family felt empowered, standing tall behind their soon-to-be-completed privacy fence. The sounds of drilling and hammering punctuated the air, yet it was the laughter and chatter of family members that filled their hearts with joy. Finally, as the last panel was installed, they stepped back to admire their handiwork. The sturdy fence stood proudly, blocking out not just Karen's unwanted gaze but also restoring a sense of freedom. The family knew they could soon return to enjoying carefree BBQs without looking over their shoulders. It was a victory worth celebrating, even if they were unaware of the storm that was about to brew with their neighbors' reaction. It didn't take long for news of the new fence to reach Karen. As she peered out her back window, her heart sank when she saw the tall wooden structure blocking her coveted view of the sunset and the serene landscape beyond. Her eyes narrowed in disbelief, and a wave of anger washed over her as she realized that her plans for peaceful evenings spent admiring the scenery were gone. Storming out onto her deck, she fumed at the sight before her. "How dare they?" she shouted into the empty air, frustration boiling up inside her. The tranquility of the previous days felt like a distant memory, replaced by a rising tide of indignation. For years, that view had been hers, something she had cherished and enjoyed, but now all that remained was a solid wall of wood. Without a moment's hesitation, Karen marched toward the family's yard, determination in every step. As she approached, her expression was fierce, ready to confront them about their audacity. To her, this was more than just a fence, it was an impediment to her enjoyment of life in her own home. "Can you believe what they've done?" she muttered to herself angrily. She was prepared for an all-out argument over what she assumed was a blatant disregard for her rights as a neighbor. With each step towards their property line, she felt more justified in what would undoubtedly be an explosive confrontation about boundaries and respect. Little did she know, this would not be just another disagreement, it would escalate into something much bigger than either side anticipated. As Karen stormed toward the family's yard, she was consumed by righteous anger, convinced that they had overstepped their bounds. However, what she didn't realize was that the family's new fence was built in complete accordance with the Homeowner Association (HOA) rules. The HOA had strict regulations regarding property lines and the height of fences, ensuring that any modifications made by homeowners were both legal and respectful of neighbors' rights. The family had meticulously followed all procedures, submitting plans for approval and receiving clearance from the HOA before construction began. This diligent adherence to community guidelines not only protected their right to install the privacy fence but also validated their need for personal space after enduring Karen's intrusive behavior for so long. When Karen confronted them, she was unaware that those community rules backed the family. Their compliance meant that they had a solid legal standing. If needed, they could bring in the HOA to mediate if Karen's anger escalated into a greater conflict. As the family enjoyed their newfound privacy behind their tall fence, the tension with Karen felt like a double-edged sword. They understood her frustration but also knew that her grievances could lead her to challenge them further. The situation served as a reminder of how closely community dynamics intertwine with personal relationships, making it evident that while they sought peace, they had inadvertently stirred up a storm that would require careful navigation in the days to come. In the weeks that followed the installation of the fence, the family found a renewed sense of peace in their backyard. They could host BBQs and gatherings without glancing over their shoulders, enjoying laughter and conversation without the shadow of Karen's watchful gaze. The children played freely, and the adults relaxed, knowing they had reclaimed their space. The fence stood as a barrier not just to eyes but to stress, allowing them to focus on creating happy memories together. Meanwhile, Karen struggled to adjust to her new reality. The absence of her once beloved view weighed heavily on her, and her frustration only deepened. She felt isolated in her own home, a place that once provided comfort now felt stifling. Days turned into weeks as she simmered over what she perceived as an unjust act by her neighbors. Every time she looked out at the wooden wall, it served as a reminder of her escalating conflict and feelings of resentment. The community dynamics shifted too. Other neighbors began to see Karen differently, whispering about her obsessive behavior and how it led to this unfortunate situation. While some empathized with her loss, many sided with the family for taking the necessary steps to protect their privacy. Ultimately, the family learned that standing up for themselves was essential, while Karen had to face the consequences of her actions alone. As they enjoyed their tranquility, they realized that sometimes boundaries are not just about walls, they are also about respect and understanding in a shared community. The experience taught everyone valuable lessons about consideration and the importance of maintaining peaceful neighborly relationships. As summer continued, the family settled into their new routine with the security of their privacy fence. Their backyard transformed into a sanctuary where laughter and joy could flourish. Each weekend, they gathered for BBQs filled with delicious food, games, and heartfelt conversations, savoring the connection that only family can bring. The worries of the past began to fade as they embraced this refreshing change. Reflecting on their experiences, the family learned valuable lessons about the importance of boundaries in community living. They realized that respecting personal space is fundamental not only to individual well-being but also to harmonious relationships with neighbors. Open communication is key, and while they had tried to address Karen's behavior directly, it became clear that sometimes boundaries must be enforced to protect one's peace. Karen's journey served as a reminder that actions have consequences and that vigilance over shared spaces should be balanced with a sense of neighborly respect. The family's decision to build a fence was not merely about creating a physical barrier, it marked a commitment to self-care and the right to enjoy their lives free from interference. As they enjoyed another sunny afternoon, surrounded by smiles and laughter, they felt grateful for their newfound tranquility. While the tensions with Karen remained unresolved, they were determined to focus on nurturing their family bonds, an essential part of life that thrived best when boundaries were respected. In the end, it was all about finding peace together in a shared community, understanding that sometimes it's necessary to stand up for oneself to protect what truly matters.